As a kid, there was absolutely nothing more fun than trying to murder my family and friends in the classic 1997 game GoldenEye. I spent countless hours in my basement playing round after round of multiplayer and remember thinking that this must be the absolute peak of gaming. I mean, how could anything get better than this? And then it was revealed that Rare, the people responsible for GoldenEye, were going to release a spiritual successor in the form of Perfect Dark. And yes, it did indeed get better. I cannot begin to describe how groundbreaking this game was at the time of its release. As a kid, it seemed absolutely unbelievable. The graphics, the music, the multiplayer, and other people shared my opinion because the game became an enormous critical and commercial success. However, come 2023, we've seen many starts and stops with this IP, which seemed destined for greatness at the time. So what happened here? How could the darling of the Nintendo shooters go on to have such a troubled future? Is there any hope for an upcoming reboot? Hello everyone, my name is Otto and welcome to Exits Examined. Join me as we explore the lives of individuals, products, media, and more after their prime time has seemingly come to an end. If that sounds good to you, there's a subscribe button below. To understand Perfect Dark, we must first understand the team that dreamed it up. In the 90s, Rare had made a name for itself through successful platforming games such as Battletoads and Donkey Kong Country. After riding high on the huge success of GoldenEye in 1997, the team made a bold decision to not make another Bond game, but instead to create their own IP, specifically one with a few notable features that wouldn't have fit in the Bond universe. They knew they wanted a first-person shooter with a female protagonist, secondary weapon features for guns, and also aliens. From this primordial soup, Perfect Dark was born. Development on Perfect Dark had an unusually high level of creative freedom compared to modern-day games. There weren't tight deadlines or meetings, and everyone on the team was welcome to come up with just cool stuff. But that's not to say development was smooth sailing. Over the course of the project, a significant portion of the staff left, but it did eventually grow to go over 3 times the size of the original GoldenEye team. Many of the voice acting and motion capturing came from the team itself, with the primary focus from the start being on multiplayer. Perfect Dark is set in an alternate 2023 against the backdrop of an intergalactic war between the Mayans, who resemble your standard Area 51 gray alien, and the Skedar, who cosplay as humans. The war bleeds onto Earth, with 2 rival companies being backed by their respective alien benefactors. Joanna Dark uncovers a corporate conspiracy involving the alien races and attempts to stop them from taking over the world. So, as you can maybe guess from that summary, the team was heavily inspired by the likes of Blade Runner and the X-Files. Players had really enjoyed the split-screen 4-player multiplayer from GoldenEye, and the team had made a heavy focus on adding a huge number of multiplayer maps, options, and modes, including co-op and even counter co-op, where one player could take control of enemies and levels to fight against Joanna, which was hugely innovative at the time. And we have got to talk about the music. The unique blend of electronic, orchestral, and ambient sounds in Perfect Dark is just amazing, as I'm sure any fan will tell you. This is perfectly encapsulated by the Chicago theme, which I hum to myself personally every time I'm walking down a city street in the rain. As you can see, there was a lot going on in this game, and an ambitiously huge number of ideas, gameplay mechanics, and features that were packed in here. In fact, the standard N64 couldn't even handle all of it and required a built-in expansion pack to even run much of the game. So this could have just easily been too much, with the entire project collapsing under the sheer weight of it all. So how did it do? Spoilers, it did phenomenally across the board, financially, critically, commercially, etc., etc. Perfect Dark garnered critical acclaim, especially for its graphics, AI, and multiplayer options. GameSpot called it unparalleled for a console FPS, and N64 magazine praised its vast improvements over its predecessor. The graphics impressed with dynamic lighting, complex geometry, and smooth animations, while the gameplay received kudos for its challenging AI and non-linear mission objectives. However, the inconsistent frame rate and Joanna Dark's character design were criticized. Despite these criticisms, a sequel was quickly greenlit, and this is where the problems really started. To begin dissecting the mess that is the Perfect Dark projects and sequels, let's take a look at them one by one. At the time, it wasn't common knowledge, but a spin-off title was begun potentially during development of the main game. It consisted of members from the original team working on a new concept that would have featured Joanna Dark's sister, Velvet, and the title was going to be called Velvet Dark. Work most likely began in 1999 as Rare had filed for a trademark and registered a domain for the game by 2000. Velvet was actually a playable character in co-op and multiplayer modes in the original game, although her character wasn't really fleshed out. We got a design document and some concept art for the spin-off, and it seems like there could have possibly been some squad-based strategy elements, but ultimately the project was never greenlit for full development. This project was largely kept under wraps, and it was only really recently that news of its development even surfaced. Now we come to the infamous Perfect Dark Zero. Chronologically, the first rumors of a sequel were in 2001 and 2002 through leaks and news articles. It was actually confirmed that Rare was in development of a sequel, but during this, they were actually acquired by Microsoft, which, as you can imagine, threw all types of wrenches in the development. After this purchase, Rare started fresh on the sequel, this time with a focus on online multiplayer from their Microsoft overlords. The game was named Perfect Dark Zero, and in a striking pivot from the original game, the team went with a more colorful and stylized art style, which, as you can imagine, brought mixed reactions from fans. The game went through a hectic development filled with starts and stops, in large part again due to Microsoft shenanigans, but eventually Zero was released on the 360 and received mostly positive reviews. The story follows a younger Joanna across the world and her adventures as a bounty hunter and early interactions with Datadyne and the Institute. Despite these initial positive reviews, over time the game has gotten a bit of a bad rep. Fans harp on the aesthetics, obviously for one, and weak mechanics like rolling and cover shooting, as well as generic character models and just not great AI. And dear me, with all this other drama, I almost forgot about one title, Perfect Dark for the Game Boy Advance. Launched in 2000, Perfect Dark centers around Joanna in a prequel to the main game, completing her training at the Carrington Institute. She embarks on missions such as destroying a cyborg facility in the South American jungle and investigating a UFO crash, and ends with the Institute continuing to look into Datadyne's activities. Development was a bit messy as it was made simultaneously with Donkey Kong Country, with the same team working on both. It was also apparently Rare's first Game Boy game to feature motion capture and rumble, which is notable. However, despite its technical achievements, it received mixed reviews from critics and fans. Some praised the game's technical aspects, such as graphics, sampled speech, and compatibility features, but criticized its superficial gameplay, especially when compared to the original N64 game. Also, it just felt like a huge tonal shift, considering the main game was a FPS, while the Game Boy version was a top-down shooter. After the somewhat underwhelming response fans had to Zero, Rare went quickly back to the drawing board and were thinking about making some radical changes in a proposed new title called Perfect Dark Core. The team imagined an older and more worn-down version of the once wisecracking Joanna, and would have been a radical departure from the more fantastic and brightly colored aesthetics of Zero, and also would have explored previously uncharted gritty sci-fi territories, which would have been very interesting to see. Design documents and details of the plot were actually drawn up, and they would have brought back some familiar elements such as the sketch art. There would have been some pretty radical departures in gameplay, mostly in the form of a mech that Joanna could pilot, and also the use of parkour-style movement over terrain. The project was under development between 2006 and 2007, but it was never given a green light after Microsoft cut the project. Microsoft made it clear that since they already had some heavyweight sci-fi shooters at the time, like Halo and Gears of War, they didn't want to be bloated down with another IP with a similar style. After those conversations with Microsoft, Perfect Dark went on the back burner for a long time. Rare focused on other projects, and there was pretty much silence until 2018 when rumors began to circulate online. In 2020, those rumors proved true as a reboot was officially announced at the Game Awards. The reboot is currently being developed by The Initiative, a new Microsoft studio with members of the team who worked on the successful Tomb Raider reboot. However, since the announcement, there hasn't really been a lot of good news. The reboot is set to be released on Xbox Game Pass, and rumors suggest that it will be episodic and a live service game. Live service games don't really have the best reputation, so this has set off some alarm bells for some fans. In addition, many core staff members left production in 2021, citing slow development time and lack of creative freedom. Quote, "It was not that we didn't know what we wanted, it was that we kept making things that weren't what we wanted," said one of the Initiative developers. "We do it over and over again. The levels we had when I left weren't the same as we had 3 months prior, or 3 months prior to that. I don't know why people just kept hitting the reset button." That was definitely contributing to the feeling that we weren't making any real progress. People just kept starting over. A lot of this can be attributed to the relationship between the Initiative and the co-developers, Crystal Dynamics. However, it seems like this relationship actually may be improving over time. As for gameplay and story, there's only really been a trickle of information. Microsoft has described the upcoming story as eco-sci-fi set in the near future. You can bet that Joanna will be fighting Datadyne again. Jo will still be a spy/Bond figure, but this time she's looking into Datadyne's actions as the company appears to be helping a world ravaged by global warming. However, Datadyne may not be acting with the most benevolent of wills here. The game will take place in Egypt with a mix of new sci-fi architecture juxtaposed by ancient structures, which is a really cool idea in my opinion. Gameplay is said to be heavily influenced by Mirror's Edge, with a heavy emphasis on traversal and mobility. However, fans will be happy to note that gunplay is still a heavy focus here, with a cover system that's got to be similar to what was in Deus Ex. So, that all sounds great, but when is the game coming out? In June 2023, the game was said to still be in pre-production and roughly 2 to 3 years away from a potential release. The reasons for this include the global pandemic, an exodus of talent, and the previously cited unclear direction from management. Game development is a tricky thing, and although this game has had a rough start, it's really too early to say if it'll be a success or not. It's a AAA game, and it's clear that a lot of people on the team have a lot of passion for this, so fans can hope. Over 20 years since the original game's release, Perfect Dark's impact is still so strongly felt. The Perfect Dark series has had a significant impact on the first-person shooter genre. The original game is considered to be one of the best first-person shooters ever made, and its innovative gameplay features have been copied by many other games in the genre. The series has also been praised for its strong female protagonist, Joanna Dark, who is one of the most iconic video game characters of all time. While the story of the game has never been anything to write home about, the atmosphere, the music, and some of the characters are extremely memorable. The series is also renowned for its local multiplayer mode, which offered extensive customization options and introduced the concept of AI-controlled opponents in multiplayer matches. While it had sequels and spin-offs, the original game remains a cult classic cherished by retro gamers, contributing to Rare's reputation as a distinguished game developer. The franchise's legacy is still cherished by those who grew up with it, myself included. It'll be very interesting to see if the IP can rise from the ashes as other franchises such as Doom or Tomb Raider, but only time will tell. The history of Perfect Dark is a tale of innovation, ambition, and challenges. From its origins at Rare, this groundbreaking game pushed the boundaries of what was possible on the Nintendo 64. With a unique blend of elements like a strong female protagonist, imaginative storylines, and a revolutionary multiplayer mode, it made a significant mark in the world of first-person shooters. However, as time went on, the path of the Perfect Dark franchise took unexpected twists and turns. Sequels and spin-offs faced mixed reviews, and the franchise seemed to have lost its way. The reboot announced in 2020 raises hopes but also gives some concerns given the episodic format and the development challenges. While there's potential for a triumphant return, there's also a lot of uncertainty surrounding the project's future. Despite these challenges, Perfect Dark's impact on gaming is undeniable, with its influence felt in the FPS genre and beyond. As we look ahead to the reboot, we can only hope that it will recapture the magic of the original and write a new chapter in the history of this beloved franchise. The legacy of Perfect Dark lives on in the hearts of its dedicated fan base, and we eagerly await what the future holds for Joanna Dark and her adventures. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. If you liked what you heard, please like and subscribe. And also consider joining my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. It can really help me get this channel off the ground and turn this from a monthly thing to a weekly thing. And as always, if you ever have any suggestions for what you'd like me to cover next, please just let me know in the comments. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys next time.